Hey, welcome to this video. The people of Portugal are known for their sweets. They have a lot of history in the trade of sugar. And these cookies we are making today are one of the most popular cookies on the island of Madeira. They're called Broas de Mel, which translates, broa means bread, but it refers to the shape of the bread, kind of like that. If you go back, that recipe I made, broa de milho and broa de centillo, that round shape, that's what it refers to. And mel means honey in Portuguese, but in this case, it refers to the honey from the sugar cane, the molasses. So these are really traditional around Christmas time to have on Madeira Island, and they're seen throughout Portugal. Madeira was such an important area for sugar production. Prince Henry the Navigator introduced sugar to Madeira Island in order to help improve its economy. And Madeira Island was a very important trade route in the 1400s when ships were leaving Europe and heading to either Africa or to the New World. In the 15th century, Madeira was the largest producer of sugar in the world. So no surprise that they use sugar in a lot of things there. And then also, obviously, with all that sugar cane, almost everybody in the world, you got a lot of extra sugar. You make alcohol with it, so you make a rum. So on Madeira Island, from this sugar, they make aguardente, and it's still very popular. I visited a sugar mill in Caleta, Madeira, where they're making this rum. Very popular in their drink poncha. If you go to Madeira, to me, every restaurant you go to, you got to sample their poncha. So this recipe uses both molasses, a little bit of molasses, and sugar cane. And I'm going to use C&H sugar cane. I know in the United States, this is an extremely popular brand, and it stands for California and Hawaii. And that's one reason there's so many Portuguese in Hawaii, is because when Hawaii was starting up their sugar production, they brought over a lot of workers from Madeira Island that were skilled in growing, harvesting, and running the mills there. So, and you'll see the influence, like the ukulele comes from Madeira Island. I believe they called it the machete. And my grandmother used to play it. They used to rap with this little machete, the ukulele. Also, the famous donut molasses are extremely popular in Hawaii. So there's a donut shop in Hawaii that's just dedicated to the art of molasses. So let's do this. Okay, we have our mixer. You don't need a mixer for this. You could also use just a bowl with a wooden spoon. Take a little more work, but definitely doable. I'll add in my sugar, 1 1/4 cups of sugar. Now you want to add in about 6 ounces of butter, 1 1/2 sticks. And if you're doing this by hand, you definitely want to make sure your butter's soft. I mean, my butter's soft right now for this machine, but makes it easier. But especially if you're doing it by hand, you don't want to use butter right out of the refrigerator. This is what is called creaming the butter and sugar. Start off on low speed, then you want to blend it for about a minute. It's already looking pretty good. You just want to make sure no big chunks of butter are sticking to the sides. But this is what you're looking for. Almost, it's kind of like a grainy paste. But that's it. You definitely don't want to see any chunks of butter. It should be incorporated. Now I have my 2 1/4 cups of flour. I'm going to mix in some of my dry ingredients just to help with the distribution. So I put in granulated salt, a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, so a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, cloves, about a 1/2 gram, it's about a 1/4 to 1/8 of a teaspoon to a 1/4 of a teaspoon. I have a 1/2 teaspoon of fresh nutmeg, a 1/2 teaspoon of powdered cinnamon, lemon rind from 1/2 lemon. And now I'll just mix these up. You could throw all those ingredients straight in the bowl, but sometimes it's a good habit to get into to mix your dry ingredients first. So now I'll crack 1 egg and put it in there. And slowly we'll add in the dry ingredients. And I almost forgot the main ingredient, 2 tablespoons of black molasses. And usually it's a pain in the butt trying to get molasses in a tablespoon and getting it out. So just take a look at how much volume is in a tablespoon and try to get as close as you can. And continue to mix. You can see it's sticking to the paddle in one big clump. So I will take that off. It looks pretty good. I see some patches. You can see there's some patch of butter that hasn't been incorporated with the molasses. And so you don't want to see any streaks of butter or flour. You just want to make sure it's incorporated well. I think it tastes really good, but you can adjust the spice level. So if you grew up and you think like, oh wow, the way my grandmother had it had more of a molasses flavor, go ahead and add another tablespoon of molasses, or double up on the nutmeg and cloves if you think it needs more. I like it the way it is. We'll move on to the next procedure. Also, the molasses is reminding me of another extremely popular dessert in Madeira that I have on my website, Broas de Mel. This is a traditional cake. This one's also served a lot around Christmas time. Tradition is to always break it with your hands, not with a knife. Now you want to roll the dough into a ball shape. Then after, put them on a lined parchment paper, and then put them in your refrigerator for probably at least an hour. You want them to cool off. You want the butter and the dough to get fairly cold. That way when you put it in the oven, the butter doesn't melt as fast in the dough, and so it doesn't spread out as fast. So depending on how precise, you just could do these by eye, or it's about a tablespoon, and just roll them up in little balls. That is it. They'll spread out probably double the width of the dough ball, so make sure you give plenty of room so they won't stick to each other. All right, the recipe makes about 45 cookies. So you want to bake them at 350 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes. They should be a nice golden color. Watch the bottom, and after maybe like 12 minutes, maybe pull one out of the oven and take a look at the bottom of the cookie to be sure it's not turning too dark. The house smells like Christmas with Broas de Mel. I made some Broas de Mel, all set. Hope you get a chance to try this recipe. Now go cook for someone you love. If you haven't done it yet, check out the website justcookwithmichael.com. The recipes there are set up in a much more organized manner than what I could do in the notes section of YouTube. So you could search recipes by like pork or chicken or beef or seafood. You could search recipes by Madeira or the Azores. And also it's much easier to print the recipes from the website. I also have some links to different articles. There's an article on piri. There's an article on convent desserts that are famous in Portugal. And also there's a couple links to food tours. If you're visiting Madeira or the mainland or the Azores, there's some food tours that I recommend trying out.